There's a number of ways NUnit provides us methods to check a collection is as we expect it to be. So let's take a look at some of these. So here we have our player character as before, and when we create a new player character, we get some default starting weapons. So let's take a look at this create starting weapons method. And here we can see our list of weapons just represented as a list of strings here. We get the default weapons short sword, short bow, and longbow. So let's look at some of the ways we can assert that this weapons collection is as we expect it to be. So here's our player character tests for our collection examples. So say we want to check that the list of weapons here doesn't contain any empty strings. An empty string is obviously not a valid description for a weapon. So in this case, we can use the is.all, which will go through our collection of weapons, and for each item in that collection, make an assert against it. So here we're saying each item in the weapons collection should not be empty. So let's run this, and it passes. If we were to go and introduce an empty weapon here now, so let's just temporarily make this an empty string. Our test now fails because one of the items is empty. So if any one of the items in the collection doesn't match the empty check, the entire assert will fail. Let's just restore our longbow here and check it passes again, which it does. If we want to check that a collection contains at least one instance of a specific item, we can use the contains.item method. So this assert will pass if at least one of the items in the collection matches this longbow description. And here we can see that we have a longbow in our starting weapons, so this test should pass, which it does. If we look at our player character here, we can see that we've got a sword, a short sword. So if we want to check that at least one of these weapons is a sword, we could write a test. So here we've got should have at least one kind of sword, and here we're using the has.sum constraint, which will pass if any one of the items matches this constraint, which is checking that at least one of our weapons contains the word sword. So let's run this, and we can see this passes. If we were to make a typo here, our test will now fail because we expected at least one item in the collection to contain the substring sword. If we want to check that a collection has a specific number of certain items, we can use the has.exactly method and specify the count of the number of items we expect. So here we're saying our list of weapons should have exactly 2 items that end with the word bow. And we can see here we've got a short bow and a long bow, so this test will pass, which it does. If we remove one of these bows, let's just comment this out, and run this test again. The test will now fail because we expected to have 2 bows when now we've only got 1. And now we have 2 bows again. We also want to check that when we create a new player character that we don't have more than one type of a given weapon. So here our test should not have more than one type of a given weapon. We're going to use the is.unique constraint to check that all of the weapons for our player character are unique. So at the minute they are unique, and we can run this and it passes. But if we add another longbow, so we've got a duplication here, longbow and longbow, our test now fails because all of the items in the collection are no longer unique. And we can just fix this. So now all of the items in the collection are unique again, and our test passes. If we want to check that a collection doesn't contain a specific item, we can use the has.none constraint here, and here we're saying that there should be no weapons that are equal to Staff of Wonder. So at the minute we don't have Staff of Wonder here, and we can run this should not have Staff of Wonder test, and it passes. If we actually add a Staff of Wonder now, our test will now fail. Just check it still passes, which it does. If we want to be explicit and check that the collection of default weapons contains exactly the correct items, we can use the is.equivalent_to method to check the list of weapons contains exactly the same elements as we expect. So here we've got this variable, expected weapons, and we're specifying all of the default weapons we expect a new player character to have. But notice, longbow comes first here, and longbow comes last here. So the is.equivalent_to method won't check the order, it'll just check that the items are equivalent. So we can run this, and our test passes. If we were to remove one of these items, and run the test again, our test will now fail because the list of items is not equivalent. Let's just fix that. Finally, if we want to check a collection is in order, we can use the is.ordered constraint. So this will check that our list of weapons is in alphabetical order. And if we run this, we can see that it fails because our list here is not in alphabetical order. Let's fix this. So now our list is in alphabetical order: longbow, shortbow, short sword. If we run the test again, our test now passes because all of the items in our weapons collection are ordered.